Welcome back to the Unframe of Mind show, where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. I'm your host, Daniel Wagner, and today I'll be speaking with a young lady by the name of Sonja Agora, hailing from 2 time zones out west. She inadvertently introduced me to a brand new vocabulary term I'd never heard of, agorism. I'd never heard this, I don't know what it is, so I started asking questions, and next thing you know, here we are. So without further ado, let's jump on into that conversation. First of all, I want to say thank you for working with me on our scheduling and coming on today to discuss what it is you do. It's kind of interesting. I've been following your Twitter feed, and I found you through some mutual post or something. I can't remember exactly. I can never remember how I meet people on Twitter, but I found you, and you had mentioned something about an agorist lifestyle. And that prompted this conversation between us about what an agorist is and how is that different from an anarchist. And I wanted to just have you on to discuss that in a little more depth, because it's a vocabulary term I had never heard before, and I was very curious about. And so far, based on our short discussion before I decided to make it this, I still don't quite understand. So maybe now's a good opportunity for you to help. I guess shed a little light on what is an agorist. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I do remember that conversation, and I really enjoyed it because we were talking about like bridging the gap between anarchism and I call it agorism. There's 2 different schools of thought. Some people say agorism, some people say agorism. I like agorism because it reminds me of agriculture. And since it is about the marketplace, I kind of lean that direction, but people say both. And what I recall saying to you in that Twitter chat was that agorism was anarchism in action. And so it was taking, like you have a bunch of individuals all living totally sovereign. No one's determining anything for them except for themselves. But what reality, like what metric are they living within? And for me, that would be something very akin to agorism, which was originally coined by Samuel Edward Konkin III. He wrote the New Libertarian Manifesto and a bunch of other things. He's passed away, but he was a big libertarian thought leader, anarchist thought leader. And I highly recommend that book because it's kind of mind-blowing. But it's funny because I came up with this concept because of my background in farming. And then I got really into activism and the medical freedom stuff during 2020 to now. And just a bunch of different things. And I was all of a sudden realizing that there was all these bridges that needed to be made between all of this. And I didn't want to protest anymore. I wanted to give people the tools they needed to be resilient within their own communities and strengthen their communities just in case something happened, but also to go back to a certain way of life. And so I kind of came up with this idea of a marketplace and, free trade and the way that people interact with these farms. And I was telling my friend, who's a very active libertarian here in Oregon, and he was like, "Oh, that's agorism." And I was like, "What?" Like, I thought I came up with that. And so I had to look up agorism, and I got Konkin's book, New Libertarian Manifesto. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of, just worded better." But basically, it's based around the agora, which is the marketplace. It's a Greek term where you have free trade and you interact with one another.
So let me hop in here for a second. So it sounds like you're explaining, like, say we got anarchy as this overarching umbrella, and agorism would be something that is a subcategory of anarchy. More like you, the way you're describing it, it kind of sounds like you're using a shorter word for anarcho-capitalist, or basically people who are think we can run society without government, but we need to operate more, or we should operate more as a capitalist style. society. Is that, am I on the right track here?
Yeah, it's definitely anarcho-capitalist. It's definitely, I feel like agorism is the vehicle which anarcho-capitalism can then exist within.
Okay, it sounds like there's a
it's an umbrella.
It's one of those weird things where people try to come up with these terms and these definitions and stuff, and it starts to, personally, it kind of starts to muddy the waters for me.
Yeah.
I get people all the time trying to tell me, oh, you don't know what real anarchy is, and they'll tell me what they think real anarchy is, and
I know,
and it's always this complicated thing, like well, anarchy is a philosophy, it's a style of government, it's this, and I'm like, it doesn't need to be that complicated. I don't know if what you think it is, but what I've found is the most simple explanation is, oh, it's just, without the state, without rulers, that's it. And then everything else we just figure out from there. Like, how do we run society outside of that? And for me, the labels start to complicate stuff unnecessarily, and I understand the need for them, but it does. Like, anarchy says what I don't believe. Agorism kind of says what you do believe, in a way, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like the yin and yang. You got anarchy, which a lot, has I would say at this point, it has a negative connotation socially. Is people think anarchy and they think like, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, they think chaos and destruction and whatever, because of a bunch of, idiots running around. But agorism is a term that most people don't know. But it is really focused on the economics and the commerce that would happen in an anarchist state. And then,
okay, yeah, that makes a little more sense.
Other than just being like, leave me alone, I'm going to live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, you can't tell me what to do, and that's great. But at some point, you're going to have to interact with society. You guys are going to have to do things together. So what is like the ruling doctrine around that?
Right. Okay. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around where this specific label fits into my current paradigm, so to speak. And like you said, anarchy itself tends to be a term that has been dirtied, muddied. I was just discussing this the other day on the Patriot Punkcast. This fact that the government has no incentive to even educate you what anarchy is, because it's antithetical to what they are. It would be like going into the Coca-Cola factory and expecting them to give you a presentation on the dangers of the cancer-causing effects that their product has. It's just not going to happen. So it seems like terms like voluntarism and things like that have been an attempt to be able to describe anarchy without using the dirtied word. And I'm wondering if agorism is another attempt at that, or if it's a whole entire thing altogether, and I'm just a dummy who's not understanding it correctly.
I don't think so. I can see that with voluntarism. I believe, and I might be totally wrong, and I might have a bunch of libertarians yell at me about this, but I believe that Konkin was a student of Rothbard, who had very anarchist, leanings. I believe that it's more of just a school of thought for anarchists to then be a part of. But I'm also I'm not trying to spread the agorist way of life. It's more of a philosophy that I fell into, where I'd already thought I came up with it on my own.
Right.
And I was like, this makes so much sense. And then I found I was like, oh, someone already did all of this work, But I do wonder, I identify, as quite anarchist, and I know a lot of people who do, but it's like, yeah, let's put us into a social situation where we have to engage in commerce and live next to each other. What does that actually look like?
Yeah.
And I think tourism helps with that. It's an umbrella to live under.
So how long have you been, considered yourself an anarchist? Has there ever been a time when you were more of a statist or fell on one side or the other of the political spectrum?
No. So when I was a teen, I was a part of this kind of micro punk, the last dying real punks, as I like to think of it, here in Oregon. And we were very anti-establishment, anti-government, simple.
Yeah.
Right. And then in my family, we bought a big farm in Southern Oregon, And I just kept on leaning more and more. Like the more we ran into regulations and the government, the more I realized that I was not. I was leaning more towards honestly like the right, because at the time I didn't know anything about libertarians. I'm saying I'm like 20 at the time, and so I was like, oh, okay, small government, less regulations. I want to be able to sell a ham to my neighbor without getting arrested, or sell raw milk over state lines if I need to without it being a felony. That's weird.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then I registered as a libertarian for a couple years because it philosophically made sense to me, but I didn't know anything about the party. And then I was not politically engaged at all. I was happy doing the farm stuff, and the rest of the world could burn, and that was fine. But then my husband and I moved to Portland in 2019 in that fall, and I was pregnant with my third. And we moved there just for his work. And we thought it'd be kind of like a fun, weird thing to do.
Okay.
And we didn't know anyone there. And it just, it was the worst place to be in 2020. And that, like, I felt so helpless, like I needed to do something. And I couldn't understand how everyone couldn't see how insane everything was. So I got really involved with activism and medical freedom. And then I would see all of these people show up to protest my protests against the government, claiming that they were anarchists. And I was like, how are you guys anarchists? You're literally protecting a government building right now. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. Nobody ever accused them of being critical thinkers. Yeah.
No, it was painful to see. And then, I was very briefly, mostly because I wanted to support some friends in the primary. I was briefly a Republican, and I basically got like chased out of the party because we would call ourselves the punk rock section, because we'd be yelling stuff that was in hindsight was very libertarian.
Yeah.
And be like, why don't they like us? Like, what we're saying is common sense, like some anarchist ideology. And then it was like, oh, it's because we don't belong. Like, we're not actually Republicans. I'm a libertarian. So now I'm registered libertarian. And it's just, I keep on getting pushed harder and harder towards the anarchy side. I don't want the government involved in anything I do at all, ever, anyone.
So what would you say would be the last string that finally broke for you, that you thought that we need a government for at least this? Surely we need it for some reason, and this is the last reason that you had. Is there any example you can think of?
I'm going really far back.
Oh, that's okay. No pressure. Like, I'm just curious.
It's really like, I mean, I'm pretty open-minded, and I ask a lot of questions, especially if it's something that I realize that I don't fully understand and I have a stance on. And then someone like combats that, and then I have to actually analyze what my stance is, and then be like, oh, I actually don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know the background on this. Maybe I should look into that. And then I look into it and I'm like, oh shit, you're right. And so I honestly, like, it really, like, the red pill moment or whatever was when we started my family's farm 12 years ago, and learning about the raw milk restrictions and a bunch of medical stuff, and vitamin C. My family's really into vitamin C high dose therapy, and the fact that what big pharma does, all of that kind of just it's like people are afraid to go down those roads, I think, sometimes when you give them evidence, because they know that it's pulling on a thread that's going to unravel. And so for me, everything just unraveled all at once. So I've been a skeptic ever since.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the whole Weezer song, if you want to destroy my sweater.
There you go.
Pull this thread as I walk away.
Yeah.
Except this is a little more an unwilling scenario for sure. Yeah, I'm just like trying to think what, like, I can't even imagine what it would have been like living in Portland during 2020 with all of this crap going on. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, if you were to try to break away from that group. What was that? The no, or not the no-go zone, the Chaz zones?
That was Seattle, but
Seattle. I'm sorry. Yeah.
But Portland, they didn't take over any areas, but there was definitely, they had territory. It was very much like gang warfare. And between like, you had guys like the Proud Boys, they would come in, and then Antifa would show up, and they'd all fight in the streets of Portland. And it was really fun to watch.
I know a little something about that. I may or may not have been a Proud Boy at one point.
Okay. All right. And honestly, it felt like a lot of like Joker and Batman, though. It's like y'all are at this point, like maybe there was a point in the beginning, but now it's like you guys are existing for each other. And like we, for my protests and stuff, like we were slowly edging our way into downtown Portland at the waterfront to do our protests that were strictly medical freedom. And so if people showed up with even Trump flags, I would tell them to put them away. Because that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was medical freedom. That was it. I don't care. This is something that should apply to everyone. Let's keep it really tight. And Tifa didn't really know what to do with that. And we would have, the Proud Boys contact us, being like, do you want us to show up? And be like, can you not this time? Like, you guys can do something else, but don't show up to this event. They'd be like, that's cool. Okay. So we had, there was an understanding, but Portland was wild. Like, I didn't know what my neighbors looked like. I moved in fall to a different house in Portland in fall of 2021, deep into Northeast Portland. And I didn't know what my neighbors looked like for a good 4 months, because
your actual neighbors or your other.
No, my neighbors, like the people to the left and right and across the street from me. I didn't know what they looked like.
Wow.
Because from the moment they got out of their car to take out their groceries and into their house, like they always had masks on. And this was also during the time where our state governor was saying, Kate Brown was saying you couldn't have more than 6 people at Thanksgiving. So I tried to have like as many people over as possible. Was there ever that moment when your neighbor removed their mask and you were like, did not expect that. Or was it just kind of normal? No, a couple of times it's like, oh, that's why you're wearing it, And
come on now.
It's Portland. You never know what you're gonna get. Like,
no, that's fair.
But but I had all these cars parked out up front, and I was like, are the neighbors gonna turn me in? Like, it was weird. Like I felt like I couldn't trust anybody.
That's such a wild place to be. Like,
and
when you're just having Thanksgiving and you don't know if your neighbors are going to turn you in for it. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
like
legitimately. I never thought about that being a concern.
Yeah. Like a decade ago, I'd have thought you were crazy if you told me, oh, hey, guess what? In a couple of years, you might be concerned about your neighbors calling the cops on you for having Thanksgiving with too many people. Like,
how wild is that?
You're kidding me.
And also, I was getting more and more into activism, and I was the political action director for a pretty big organization here in Oregon called Free Oregon for a minute. We were throwing a bunch of medical freedom rallies and paying lawyers to lawsuits and stuff against the state. And so walking around Portland with my kids became like really stressful because I was worried about being seen because we don't wear masks. Yeah. And there was times where I was like, maybe we should just wear masks because it'll be less stressful. But it wasn't until we left Portland a year and a half ago, to about an hour south of Portland, that I could finally like breathe. I didn't realize how much anxiety and stress had been sitting on me.
No pun intended. I had no idea. Oh, sorry. No pun intended, right?
Yeah. And it was like such a weight off, and I couldn't really realize that till I got out of there.
So are you finding that political activism of any sort is, I guess, useful still today, or are you kind of just done with it at this point? Like, where are your general feelings on that?
I feel like I'm far more influential saying like random stuff on Twitter than I ever was doing protests and rallies in Oregon. I'm actually very anti-protests at this point. It's It's exactly what the government wants. It's a cathartic release. Everyone goes out, they scream in the street, and then they go home and they pat themselves on the back and then say, "Yay, we fought for liberty."
Right.
Yeah.
What impact did you actually have? But yeah, I like what you said, a cathartic release, and
It is.
I could
Yeah,
definitely see that.
and it
There's
really
people,
is.
man. Every time I go to one of these things, I'm just kind of observing. I never really get like in the fray and have my chance or anything like that. I just sit there and watch the people, and I see people just sit there screaming at the top of their lungs, and you could clearly they're not listening. And it was funny that I went to one, and there's a bunch of these left wing protesters, all in their colorful regalia and everything else, and they got their signs and things. Well, I've got my phone, I'm filming, and I walk up to one and I'm trying to film what the sign says. I'm literally trying to read what I presume is a female sign says, and she's constantly like blocking me, covering me with her cape, or covering herself with the cape, so I can't see it. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. It's just wild. It's so hilarious just to watch these people act.
Oh yeah,
and it's both sides. Honestly, it's both sides. Nobody's listening.
it's funny.
Oh, go ahead.
I got pretty familiar with a bunch of the, Antifa types that showed up to my protests, like to the point where they'd be like, "Hey, Sonja," and I'd be like, "Hey," be like, "Are you guys going to be chill today?" And they're like, "I don't know, maybe."
I don't know.
And it was pretty funny. Like I might have made a lot of enemies with, like when I was doing medical freedom protests, there weren't really many libertarians that showed up. It was really like the Republicans, the conservatives. They showed up to my protests and rallies, and that was great. We needed as many people as possible for what we were trying to do. But they were not very good at not reacting to what the counter protesters were trying to do.
Right.
So Antifa and the counter protesters, they egg you on. They need to get you irate and upset so that you respond, so that then they are legitimized in responding. They won't do anything unless you do something.
Yeah. They need that photo op.
100%. And I realized this. And so I created a de-escalation team that could stand in between Antifa and my event, because I cared about my event and I wanted my event to be successful. And these people at my event, like Republicans, conservatives, whatever, they would march over and start getting in Antifa's faces and like screaming at them because they were mad about what Antifa was saying. And I would have to get in between them and shove them back. And it really confused people. They're like, "Why are you defending them?" And I was like, "I'm not defending them. I'm defending my event. Like, I'm sorry that you don't see the big picture."
Yeah, and they're thinking they're going to go over to these Antifa folks and just change their mind with their words, or
by like screaming at them and shoving them. And it's like, you're literally giving them what they want. And, my events were really successful. I never had them overrun or destroyed by any of those guys.
Yeah,
because
probably why we never heard about your events in the news, because there was nothing major that happened.
Yeah. Yep. Too successful.
Excellent. What's interesting is I did go to one. I think, what was the event? I think it was when Matt Walsh was promoting the documentary about transitioning trans. And
What is a woman?
What is a woman? That one. When he was promoting that one, and they came to Nashville, and they got this big old huge, they're out there on the plaza and they're doing their thing. Well, this is the first event I had been to where all of the protesters, left and right, were kind of allowed to intermingle and mix. Like there was no police presence explicitly keeping them separated, which was a far cry different from my very first one when I went to Pulaski and checked it out. That was my first experience with any of these things. And when I arrived, the first question I'm asked is, "What side are you on?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What side am I on?" And they had, all the people were separated into basically the left and the right, and then they had the street blocked off, and the police were in the middle of the street. That was my first experience, and I was like, "That's wild!" Like, and they're just yelling at each other from across the street. Small side note, it was funny. I went to the left winger side, and I was listening to them go, "Whose streets? our streets, and they were chanting, whose streets, our streets, and they were literally up on the sidewalk, up on the curb, and the police were the ones controlling the streets, so it was not their streets. Anyway, so fast forward to the Nashville event, and I go out there, and I notice that everybody's intermingling, and everybody's kind of mixing, and nobody's like losing their cool, and nobody's fighting. They're still yelling at each other, and they're still doing their chants and things like that. But I also noticed that within that, you could see people like having smaller debates, almost like a hurricane through the water creates all little smaller little eddies around it, a little small, interaction with the water, little miniature hurricanes, if you will. And I could see people having discussions back and forth and discussing things and pulling out their phones and showing each other pictures and articles and things like that. And it was fine. It was just fine. And nobody,
Cool.
I don't, it was just blew my mind. I just don't know if that was a change in the direction in general, or if that just was an isolated event. But
I mean, I think at that point, that was, when was that? That wasn't too long ago that What Is a Woman came out.
Yeah, I think it was about last year or so.
I think a lot of Antifa kind of branched off because there was quite the divide between actual anarchists and communist statists, right? Yeah. And they had a bunch of infighting. And I remember at one point, like a kind of a head Antifa guy in Portland or whatever put out a tweet regarding the protests that we were doing, saying like, stop showing up to their protests. Like they're fighting the government. Like, we're supposed to be anarchists, leave them alone. And a bunch of people were mad at that. And I was like, ooh, you guys have like inner politics going on.
Oh no, people disagreeing on stuff. Yeah. That's weird.
But I had some really great conversations with them. And you could tell when it started to kind of shake their paradigm a little bit, because they would get squirrely and run away, when you started kind of getting deeper, being like, what are your values actually? Like, what do you want? Like, how much authority do you want the government to have over your life? You want the government to come in here and like slap us around? That's
the ultimate question, really.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate question for sure.
Yeah, sure. Short-term gains, long-term consequences. Like you say that's okay right now for this group right here, but it's now you let them do it. It set a precedent. It's going to continue.
Right. Definitely not a lot of forward thinking going on at this point.
No, and that drives me crazy. That's something I realized that I don't, I feel fairly alone a lot of times when I talk to people, is that I don't understand how people aren't looking forward all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I've got I've had a lot of experience with dealing with folks, and I'm finding as being an anarchist, it's since I have some values on the left and the right, I can pretty much get along with anybody on anything. We have our small debates and whatnot, but do you find that it's kind of disarming for people when they find out you're not hardline right or hardline left? Is that what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, my husband and I were at an event that we were throwing. And this person came up to us and was screaming at us about, because we were going on about bodily autonomy. And she was like, yeah, but like, you don't like, you want women to be forced to give birth, and you're, blah, 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 you're anti-abortion. And I was like, actually, I don't think the government should have a role in that at all. I have personal principles about like what you should do with your body and what's right and what's wrong, but the government shouldn't have any authority over that. So I don't actually support that. And her whole face fell. Like she never expected in 1,000 years for me to say that. And I could see that there was like a paradigm, like destruction happening in her brain.
Well, that perfectly highlights exactly, in my opinion, what the problem is, insofar as the stakes are so high, and for one side to win means the other side loses completely. Like there's no option for them. So right. It makes sense. It makes sense why the emotions are so high, why everybody feels like the stakes are so high, because they are high, because the way we've designed our society. And, because if you have your principles on abortion, there's no negotiating like either you're pro-life or you're not. I mean, I don't know. There's not like a 50% mark where it's we can all go, okay, that's cool. It's not like a tax rate where we're like, 25 might be a little high. Maybe we go with like a 23. It's not like that. So when the government is saying, hey, we're gonna use the force of the government, and we're gonna make arguments to get that power to use the force of the government to force you to do what we want. I can completely understand where something like that would completely disarm someone. It's like, oh, well, you're not actually the enemy because you're not actually going to use the government against me. You just
Right.
believe what you believe. Like that's
right. I have my own personal principles, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean I'm going to like go bring the government in to enforce my principles. Like,
yeah. You're not essentially going to hire a hitman to come in and do your dirty work for you. Like unless I'm willing to force you through that abortion myself, I'm not going to also ask the government to do it either.
Exactly.
Like I don't think we should ever ask the government to do anything we're not willing to do ourselves. Like straight up. I don't know
that's a good way to put it. I like that.
What more needs to be said, and that's really what it boils down to. I think Stefan Molyneux had a really good argument called the against me argument. Basically, it's like, hey, you know what? Okay, so if you think smoking weed should be illegal, that means you think you should have the armed government, the strong arm of the government come in and put me in jail for smoking weed. And I think smoking weed is just fine. I don't see any problem with it. And if you're willing to throw me in jail, if you're personally willing to throw me in jail over smoking weed, then we can't be friends. Like that's not. Yeah. I can't interact with you anymore. That's just unacceptable.
Well, there's a lot of humanizing that happens too. Like I felt like that for me, that was probably the most positive thing about the protests and the rallies was the humanizing element, to be able to go over to the other side and be like, hey, what's up? Like, I'm a human being, because when you're just online, you're looking at videos and stuff all the time. It's really easy to create a lot of monsters. But when you have to look at each other in the face, it changes everything.
Oh, 100%. That changes everything. It changes everything. I've actually got a lot of the friends that I've made that are opposite the political spectrum from me are ones that I've met just out and about in the street. Maybe it's the cashier at the Walmart, and I've built some rapport with her, or it's this guy that works down here at the local shop, and I'm just like, hey, what's up? And we get to build rapport, and it's like that's kind of how I've been able to make those friends still, without because otherwise we kind of risk falling into an echo chamber. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all because I'm sorry, but I've got a lot of right-wing friends, but I'm sorry. They're crazier than box of loons, man. Some of them got some wild ideas. And I'm just like, you guys are just as crazy as the other side, honestly. But in general, you're not trying to use the government to kill me either. So, there's that.
A little bit more common ground with those guys, but yeah, it's certainly a lot of insanity.
Yeah, and that's what I would tell my friends all the time. We got podcast we run, Patriot Punkcast, and I told him, hey, you know what? Because he's a statist. He still believes there's a role for the government, and that's fine. And pretty much anybody who's willing to fight for smaller government, we're friends, dude. We will march arm in arm until we can get the government as small as we possibly can. At which point, then it's time to have that discussion. Now you're my enemy because now we have to figure out how to. Okay, we're going to keep this thing around, or we're going to go ahead and just squish it while it's tiny. But until that day comes, I have a lot of friends on the right that are more in alignment with me. I guess the question would be who do you most align with? In general, I kind of got my theories. I don't know you from Adam, but I got my theories. But what would you say if you had to be?
I mean, libertarians. But honestly, the most people that I identify with that are doing the same things, like farming and into agriculture and prepping, they're all conservative Republicans, and they just don't realize they're libertarians.
Oh my God. Have you found that too?
Yeah. And I'm like, hey, you realize that you're not actually a Republican because Republicans don't actually want to make the states smaller.
Gosh, I had that theory. I didn't know if anybody else noticed.
No, it's a thing. It's a thing for sure. And they'll be like, yeah, but like, I don't want to like not be able to vote in the primary or whatever. I'm like, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, I keep telling people all the time. I'm like, my theory is that most people are libertarian in general, but
yeah,
they don't know what they don't know what it is. So they have no idea that they are libertarian. And I just based because I base on their actions, not so much their words. You know, I can tell when you're just
totally.
spouting off your political talking points. That's different.
Sure.
But the way you live and the way you actually operate, you're a libertarian, dude. I can tell.
You know, all these like preppers and, you know, vets and people out there like just doing the thing.
Yeah, libertarian was.
You guys are libertarians, and like that doesn't mean you need to join the party.
Yeah,
but that you understand the vibe.
Yeah, I think for me, libertarianism was like a gateway drug to anarchism. It made me a lot more. It was like my path toward it, and then I realized later on. Excuse me. I realized later on that there were a lot of people that consider themselves libertarian anarchists, which is to me sounds like a conflict of terms, almost an oxymoron to me. But again, that might just be I'm thinking big L libertarian anarchism is not a thing. That's weird.
Yeah, I guess they just don't want to be like full on like anarchist, you know.
Yeah.
If you're a big L libertarian, you know, you're trying to get like candidates and voting and local elections, and that's not very anarchist.
Yeah. You obviously feel like government's a solution.
Right.
I mean,
it's a struggle for me because I'm involved with the Libertarian Party here in Oregon, and I'm the secretary for our policy board. And I'm probably a terrible secretary because I'm just like, I don't want to, you know, I don't care. I really don't care about the candidates. Like if I have someone I know that I believe in, that I think is a good person, yeah, I'll support them. I'll tell people to support them. That sounds great. But not just like because, oh, there's someone running, like because, you know, we have to get more people registered just because. Like for me, it's your daily actions. It's more about the philosophy and the action than writing it on paper.
So have you found that living your life the way you live it, have you found that you're influencing anybody, or has anybody else, I guess, changed their ways? Because you know, have you noticed any of that? But by modeling the lifestyle rather than talking about it, have you noticed anybody even curious about what you're doing?
Yeah, a little bit. Man, I wish I could remember his name, but this guy reached out to me. I post a bunch of like butchery videos, which people get really excited about. My mother's a butcher. I say butcher on Twitter, but I'm definitely in training. My mother is like, she's got it. I really hope that I can be at the level she's at someday. And,
wow. Yeah, I seen that video you posted the other day with when you're taking a handsaw.
Oh my gosh. I have a whole video, but I am not gonna post it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Because
you're about 20 times more manly than I am when it comes to that. That was amazing.
The angle and the amount of effort it took. It's like a lewd video. Like I'm saving that for my Only Farms account.
Oh my god.
It's like it was one of the most strenuous things I've ever done in my life. And all the men were unavailable. So we normally don't do that. Well, normally we have an electric saw. But then we would also ask a guy to do it, but they weren't around. So we were like, I guess we're going to do it.
I guess. Yep.
And it was fun.
That's a great mindset.
It was a good test of what I could do.
So you were saying about the guy you wish you could remember his name.
Yeah. So he saw these videos and he was really excited about it. So he started writing me in my DMs about my family's farm and butchery classes. And I said, yeah, they do butchery classes. They also do this 3-month internship program, and you can come and learn all this stuff. They definitely need help in the butchery. And so then he filled out all the forms that I showed him how to do it. And he had a phone call with them, and he's in Texas. My family's in Oregon. So it sounds like at some point he's going to come out and do an internship. So that's really cool. And it's not just about my family's farm. I try and honestly, like the more farms I connect with, the more I want to bring them into the fold. because I want people to be able to gain skills that are applicable, and so that they can be an asset to anywhere that they land at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's about all you can ask for sure. And I've been trying to instill that in my kids as well. Like, hey, you need to have some skills. You need to have something you can offer besides, sitting around watching TikTok all day.
Yeah, don't be dead weight. Like, that's the thing. Like, I got really stressed thinking about, a decline in things happening in the country. And being like, wow, like all these people are going to pour out of the cities and they're going to go towards the farms. And then I'm like, wow, there's all these farms that don't have people there all the time, because a lot of the time they want to be isolated.
Right.
And I was like, maybe there's some sort of gap that can be bridged where people have like food security, water, shelter, and also these farms have like labor and skilled people helping them. Like, maybe there's something that can be done there.
I don't know. I'm concerned if things do break bad, they're going to break bad real quick. It's going to be slow and then very, very sudden. And I think people like us that are out more in the rural communities, we're going to be able to see it coming from a mile away, so to speak. But it's going to be crazy in the cities. I don't know how they're going to do it.
No, they're not.
Yeah, for sure. Hell, I just started. So you're talking about butchering and stuff. I just started doing my own chickens.
Hey!
Not live ones yet, but I stopped buying meat in like just the pre-butchered packs, the chicken breasts, chicken legs, all that. I started just buying whole fryers and cutting them up, which is great because I'm getting a lot more meat. And I'm getting pieces of chicken that you can't buy at the store.
Yes.
And I'm getting the additional like fat that's on them and stuff that I render down into schmaltz.
You get the sweet little back meat. There's those 2 pockets on the back next to the spine that have this like.
Oh my God, that's like chicken oysters in there. It's so good.
You only know about
that.
You
cannot buy that.
Butcher like whole chickens.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's the best part of the chicken, in my opinion. Like I'm digging for that piece. I don't think anybody in my family's had it except me. Now I feel bad now because I always eat them. Maybe I should let them try it once in a while. Anyway, so hey, listen, I appreciate you coming on and giving me a little more in-depth information about what Agorist is and whatnot. It's very fascinating to see different folks, applying these principles in different ways. So, did you have any questions for me before we wrap up, or anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I think that was pretty good coverage.
Okay, well, I think we did well. Anyway, so yeah, I appreciate you for coming on. Where can folks find you if they want to reach out to you?
I am at Sonja Agora. That's Sonja with a J, Agora at Twitter.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap it up from here.